My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. Now, we're looking at the linguistics of the resurrection in 1 Corinthians 15. I shared with you that when Paul said, when the mortal shall put on immortality, that is, the corruptible shall put on incorruptibility, that Paul uses two very distinct words that just really, in the huge majority of cases, simply do not refer to biological substance. Now, we want to be honest, we want to be objective. Is it theoretically possible that he could be using them that way? Well, yes, but the context would have to support that. And when we have words that simply are not used to speak of biological substance, biological decay, but rather are used consistently to speak of man in a realm opposed to God, as opposed to man in a realm in harmony and unity and fellowship with God, that ought to carry some weight with us. And by the way, in this morning's study, I want you to notice a verse that really, as I read the commentators, I see very little attention paid to this. Now maybe I'm missing those comments. But Paul says in 1 Corinthians 15:43, now remember, this it is the body of 1 Corinthians 15:35. With what body, singular, do they come? Now, it is sown in dishonor. It is raised in glory. I tell you what, folks, we have right here, in a nutshell, Reader's Digest version of a motif, of a theme that was dominant in the ancient world. And that theme is shame versus glory. You see, in the ancient world, in the mindset of the Hebrews, when you were defeated, when you had been disgraced, when you'd lost everything, when you had lost your standing, you were dead. You were not biologically dead. You had not ceased to live and breathe as a human being, but you were dead. We find this in Hosea 13. When Israel obeyed, he was exalted. When Ephraim humbled himself, he was magnified. But when Ephraim sinned, he died, yet he sinned more and more. Look, this is dead men sinning, which I don't think is possible for biologically dead human beings. Likewise in Ezekiel chapter 37. And by the way, Hosea 13, Ezekiel 37 lie behind 1 Corinthians 15, serve as the source of Paul's resurrection doctrine. Well, in Ezekiel 37, here is Judah in Babylonian captivity. How are they described? They are described as dead bones. They are described as in the graves. And yet God depicts them. He's talking to them. And he says, I will raise you up out of your graves when I put my spirit in you. Well, guess what? Acts chapter 2, God put his spirit in Israel, the obedient remnant of Israel. And what happened? Well, here was Judah in Ezekiel 37, alienated from God, dead, covenantally dead, just like Hosea chapter 5, I have torn you as a lion, as a young lion tears its victim. No man can salvage. Hosea chapter 6, 5 and following. He has slain us. Here's living people talking, but they were dead. They were covenantally dead. They were dead from fellowship with God. Sin, dead. So, when we examine the concept of anyone alienated from God being dead, being shamed, being defiled, but the promise that when they would be vindicated, they would be glorified, they would be raised from the dead. Look, folks, we don't have this concept in our psyche like the ancients did. Our obligation, however, is to get inside their psyche. The early church was enduring and experiencing societal death because they were hated, they were despised, they were persecuted. And thus Paul could say that they were experiencing the sufferings of Christ, Romans 8:17. But he said, I reckon that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory that is about to be revealed in us. Here is shame. Here is the body that was under persecution, that was humiliated, subjected to futility. But Paul says, it is about to be glorified. It is about to be vindicated. As he says later in that chapter, those that he called, he glorified, he vindicated, he identified. Folks, we have to get this concept in our mind. And so I suggest to you, when Paul says it, the body, was sown in dishonor, he was not talking about the human body. Now, that raises an issue of Gnosticism. You know, just this last week, I received some correspondence accusing full preterists of being Gnostic. Well, look, folks, I want to say this as kindly as possible. In about 10 out of 10 cases in which people accuse preterists of being Gnostic, number one, they either do not know what Gnosticism truly taught, or number two, they're completely and totally distorting the definition or application, I should say, of Gnosticism to preterists. Now, why is that? Have you ever heard or read of a preterist say the human body is defiled, the human body is evil, the human body is corrupt? No, you have not. But guess what? Gnostics said the human biological flesh is defiled. It is vile. Okay, wait a minute. Those are words that Paul used for the, quote, the body in 1 Corinthians 15 and the body in Philippians chapter 3. And yet we are told those passages are talking about the human body by those who believe that Paul's talking about the resurrection of a future body. Oh, wait a minute. Who is it then that is actually saying that the human body is a body of humiliation? Who is it that's actually saying that the human body is vile? Who is it that is actually saying that the human body is a dishonorable thing? According to 1 Corinthians 15:43, it's right there. Look, folks, we have to understand. It's not the preterists who are taking the Gnostic view at all. Preterists do not say that the human body is dishonorable. Preterists do not say that the human body is vile or a body of humiliation. It is the futurist. It is those who say Paul's talking about the human body, is sown in dishonor. It's not what Paul's talking about. And we've got a whole lot more on this entire concept of honor versus shame, and how it fits perfectly into what Paul's talking about resurrection. And we'll see that on the flip side. We'll see you there.